The bride never mentioned her father's name, not once. Not during planning, not on the invites, not even in her vows. To her, he didn't exist. But when the $40,000 dress arrived, the private villa was booked, and the 5-tier cake rolled in with Swarovski crystals, no one asked how. Not even the groom. Until the best man accidentally saw the receipt, tucked in a cufflink box. His name was on everything. The man who wasn't invited paid for the entire wedding, in secret. Why? Not even the bride knew. But his reason would. Burn deeper than betrayal, it would unearth a lie she wasn't ready to face. Some absences are louder than applause. The lace on her veil brushed against her cheek as the wind shifted. A low breeze, not enough to lift the petals scattered across the aisle, but just enough to stir the silence that had settled over one seat in the front row. Row 2, seat 3, gold-rimmed place card, empty chair. The only one without a guest. Natalie. Saw it. She had seen it all day. She smiled for the cameras. Tilted her head just enough to catch the light. Laughed when the champagne was passed. But her eyes, those traitors, kept drifting. Past her bridesmaids. Past her mother's tight-lipped pride. Past the photographer's flash. Back to the space that had once been a man. She didn't say his name. Not even to herself. The officiant's words blurred into a melody of approval and permanence. A promise spoken in sunlight. Do you, Natalie Jane Moreau? The rest faded. Her fingers tightened around Liam's. His thumb brushed hers warm, certain. She said yes. Of course she did. Confetti floated like snow when they exited. Everyone was crying in the pretty way, the curated way. A grandmother gabbing her eyes, a flower girl losing her shoes. People took selfies under the arch her mother had insisted on. Champagne flowed like absolution, but he wasn't there to see it. There was a moment, half a second, when Natalie turned her head, thinking she'd heard her name said low, behind the rose-covered arbor. She swore she saw someone step back, just beyond the hedges. A shadow with shoulders she used to recognize. But when she blinked, there was no one. Just ivy and wind and the long ache of maybe. She clutched her bouquet tighter. Something shifted. Beneath the stems, a sliver of ribbon untucked itself, fluttering down to her wrist. There, stitched into the lining of the satin handle, was a thread of blue, faded, familiar, almost denim. The edge of an old shirt. She swallowed hard. The florist had said nothing about it. Liam leaned close. You okay? She nodded too quickly. Just overwhelmed, but the blue thread wouldn't let go. She ran her thumb across it, once, twice. It was frayed. Like it had been cut. Later, during the reception, Natalie barely touched her meal. Her mother made a speech graceful, poised. All about resilience and raising a daughter alone. She got a standing ovation. But there are some lies applause can't drown. The best man, Mason, rose for his toast. His jokes were polished, his smile effortless. But when he reached into his pocket for a folded note, something else came out with it. A receipt, half crumpled, pink-hued, like it had been buried under wedding invoices. It slipped to the floor. Natalie didn't see it, but Liam did. And Mason, pausing for only half a breath, bent down, picked it up, glanced at it, then froze. He said nothing, just kept the toast short. No more jokes. Later, Natalie caught him staring at her across the dance floor. Eyes narrow, calculating, as if he knew something and wasn't sure if he should say it. When she found a quiet moment behind the tent, she let her hand drift to her bouquet again. That blue thread was still there. She tugged it. It unraveled. Slow and soft, revealing a small slip of folded paper beneath the flowers. Tucked so deep, it couldn't have been placed by accident. She hesitated, looked around. No one watching. Not even Liam. The paper smelled like cedar. Like old drawers and colder Decembers. Her fingers shook as she opened it. For my little girl, no matter what you believe. That was all. No name, No date, but she knew the handwriting. Some ghosts were ink instead of chains. She folded it back in place and shoved it deeper into the bouquet. Inside the hall, the playlist she'd spent months curating began to play. Every song had been handpicked. She and her mother had gone over it twice. But there, at the halfway mark, slipped in quietly like it belonged, was the song her father used to hum while driving. She hadn't heard it in 10 years. Panic flickered through her. Her gaze shot to the DJ booth. New guy, hired last minute. Cheap and easy. She crossed the room. "Where'd you get this playlist?" The DJ blinked. "It was preloaded on the drive your mom gave me. Said everything was set." She turned away before her throat could betray her. At the dessert table, she found her mother talking with one of the vendors, laughing, recounting the seating chart fiasco like a war story. Her pearls were tight around her neck like they might hold in something. Natalie studied her for a long time, and for the first time, she wondered what her mother was afraid of. But what she feared most had already paid the bill. After the final dance, after the hugs and photos, and one too many glasses of champagne, Natalie returned to the bridal suite to change. There was an envelope on the vanity, white, unmarked. Inside, a duplicate of the final invoice. Catering, venue, dress, music, all paid. The card was not in her mother's name. The name on the receipt wasn't hers either. It was a man's name. One that hadn't been spoken aloud in 8 years. Her father's. She sat on the edge of the vanity bench. The room spun, not with drink, but with memory. A man standing at a doorway, holding a duffel bag. Her mother behind her, arms folded. No tears, just silence. The kind of silence that punishes. "I'm sorry," he had said. She hadn't answered. She had only turned away. She hadn't known that silence could grow teeth, that it could follow you, snapping at your heels even on your wedding day. She picked up the receipt again, studied it. A note was scrawled in the corner. "All I ever wanted was your joy. Let me give you that, even if I'm not in it." She blinked hard. It didn't help. Outside the door, someone knocked. "They're ready to send you off," Liam's voice called. "I'll be right there." She answered, but her voice cracked like ice underfoot. She stared into the mirror. Mascara perfect. Lipstick untouched. Dress flawless. But there beneath it all was the child who once believed leaving meant not caring. She now saw that sometimes love retreats, not out of cruelty, but because it's been told to. She gathered herself, folded the receipt once, twice, then again, tucked it into the lining of her purse. At the door, she paused, looked back at the bouquet on the counter, the blue thread still loose and curling. She left it behind. If justice still matters, you'll want the next page. Why would a father pay for a wedding he wasn't welcome to witness? Because love, sometimes, is the chair that stays empty. It was never about being seen. It was about being remembered. He parked the car 3 houses down, in the shade of a maple tree, just beginning to turn. The windows were tinted, the engine off. The bouquet sat in his lap, wrapped in waxed paper, breathless with baby's breath, and 3 kinds of roses she used to name in nursery rhymes. He hadn't moved in 27 minutes. The music from the reception carried faintly on the breeze. Laughter swelled like it had permission. The kind of joy that didn't wait for forgiveness. He didn't dare open the window. There was glitter on the grass. Stray petals, pink and white, like the kind she'd scatter across the living room when she played wedding at 5 years old. He remembered stepping over them once, bare feet soft with fatigue after work, and her voice piping up, "Daddy, you stepped on my aisle." She had giggled like it was holy. Now, the real aisle was 300 feet away, wrapped in floral arches and glass lanterns. And he wasn't invited to walk it. He leaned back. The seat creaked. In his hand, the envelope, heavy with one final check, sealed, unsigned. He would He always did, but today, even the pen felt heavier than usual. He kept the letter beneath it, folded in thirds neat. His handwriting had thinned with the years. It was all he had left to give her. But some apologies are written for eyes that will never open them. The rearview mirror showed slivers of the wedding, movement, color, a woman in green adjusting her hat. He could just make out Natalie's silhouette beside the groom, tall, composed. Her mother's posture, his chin. Her dress shimmered like snowfall dot. She hadn't looked toward the street once. The bouquet in his lap shifted when he exhaled. A single petal broke loose. He caught it, held it between thumb and forefinger. Velvet. Soft. Gone by morning. 8 years ago, the door had closed without a word. She hadn't slammed it, not exactly, it had clicked. That sound was worse. That was the day he'd left without saying the one thing that mattered. The truth had caught in. His throat like a stone. She had thought he chose to go. She never knew he was told to. She never knew. The envelope her mother handed him on the porch that day, the one marked with court dates and warnings and the threat of full custody. If he dared challenge it. She never knew about the lie her mother buried him with. She was 17, too angry to ask, too betrayed to listen, and maybe he was too proud to explain. He watched her laugh, now real, teeth showing laughter, and something split inside him. Not envy, not sadness, just distance. He hadn't heard that sound in a decade. The memory returned, sharp and out of sequence. Her first tooth lost in a bowl of cereal. Her fear of thunderstorms. Crawling into his bed with a stuffed lion named Henry. The matching father-daughter t-shirts, she insisted. On every Sunday morning until she was 9. Some fathers vanish in memories before they disappear in person. The florist had looked confused when he ordered the bouquet. "You want them wrapped in denim ribbon?" She asked. "Yes," he said. "Any particular reason?" He paused. It used to be her favorite shirt. She wore it until the buttons gave up. He hadn't known then it would end up in her wedding bouquet, stitched in, hidden. But maybe love has a way of planting itself where it hopes to bloom. He watched the waiters begin to clear glasses. Someone played an old song on the piano off-key, probably improvised. He didn't recognize it, but the rhythm mimicked something ancient. Farewells, maybe. Or regret. A child darted past his car, chasing a napkin in the wind. The boy looked about 6, gap-toothed, free. He waved at the car without stopping. For a moment, he felt seeing. Then the boy was gone. He shifted forward. The seatbelt lock clicked faintly against the silence. He opened the glove box. Inside, a small metal tin. He lifted the lid. USB drive, 1 file. Not for today. Not yet. He placed the envelope on the passenger seat, smoothed it, picked up the pen, stared at the line beneath signature. He wrote his name slowly, like it might undo something. Then he folded the receipt, tucked it under the bouquet, and placed them both beside the letter on the seat. But the ink he spilled today would stain more than paper. In the rear view, Natalie hugged a woman who wasn't her mother, an aunt, maybe. Her face turned slightly toward the road, almost toward him. He held his breath, but her gaze never reached the street. He didn't expect it to. He rested his hand over the bouquet one last time. The petals were warm from the sun. The denim ribbon was beginning to fray. His phone buzzed once. A message from a blocked number. "You said you wouldn't come." He didn't answer. Instead, he reached into the glove compartment again and removed an old photo. Edges curled, a crease across the middle. Him and Natalie, fishing. She was maybe 8. Holding a plastic rod, eyes squinting in sunlight. Her hand in his. Her smile loud enough to outshine the lake. He stared at it for a long time. If justice still matters, you'll want the next page. He turned the key. The engine hummed. He drove away slowly, never looking back. But the bouquet remained, passenger seat. Denim ribbon unraveling, a letter unopened, a name signed. A secret waiting, because the secret he buried that day is about to come unburied. Money doesn't lie, but silence does. The cufflink box was too small to hold anything heavy, but it made a sound when it moved like a whisper trapped in velvet. Jamie didn't mean to open it. He was just clearing the mess from the groom's suite, brushing confetti off the rented tuxes and slipping leftover vows into a pocket when his thumb nudged the lid loose. Something inside fluttered, not a note, not a button. A folded slip of paper with edges softened by time, the ink slightly smudged, like it had been opened and closed more than once, maybe in hesitation, maybe in guilt. The receipt was long, itemized with brutal precision. Florals, catering, venue deposit, custom embroidery on the veil. Total, $74,800, paid in full. The name printed at the bottom stilled the room. Walter Ames. Her father. Jamie stared at it, numb fingers curling at the edges. Outside, music bloomed and receded. The muffled bass of a reception that didn't know it was built on a ghost. They'd all been told he was gone, not dead. Just dismissed, estranged, toxic, the kind of father you don't speak of in speeches. Or seat at the front row. But he had paid for everything. Jamie folded the receipt in two, then into four, then slipped it into his breast pocket like a secret he hadn't agreed to keep. The air in the room felt different now. Not haunted, just heavier, as if the walls were waiting for someone to say it aloud. He checked his phone. No service. Of course not. Old vineyard, stone walls, hills that swallowed signal like shame. He walked out toward the edge of the property where the grass gave way to gravel and the reception lines returned. Her name lit his call list. She didn't answer. He left no message. Just silence. He tried again. Then he stood there, blinking against the wind that kicked up petals and ribbons from the road's edge, the sky turning a kind of purple that made you forget what time it was. Somewhere behind him, glasses clinked. Someone was laughing too loudly. But in his chest, a steady hum began. Something wasn't right. Narrator aside, but the silence wasn't empty. It was hiding something that had teeth. The bride Marin found him an hour later. Hair slightly loosened from the ceremony, heels swapped for flats, a glass of champagne that had gone flat in her hand. Her smile had wilted too, the way flowers do after the applause fades. "You missed the dancing," she said. Jamie turned. "I found something." He didn't need to say it. He just held it out, creased, warm from his pocket. She didn't take it. Just looked at it like it might stain her fingers. Her throat worked. "Where did you?" "In the cufflink box." A beat. Then two. "That's not he's not." Her voice caught like a splinter. Jamie didn't press. He waited. "I don't know why he did that," she finally said. "We haven't spoken in years, I told you. He wasn't invited. But he paid. I didn't ask him to." She set the glass down too hard. "I didn't know." Her hands rubbed her arms. Her dress, elegant and ivory, looked too tight now. Too heavy. He wasn't supposed to show up. He didn't. Jamie's voice was soft. Too soft. Like he didn't want to believe what he was thinking either. Then why would he? He trailed off. Marin didn't answer. Her eyes were far away. Flashback flickered. The last time they spoke, a Sunday, late fall. She'd shown up at his door. Without warning, holding a framed photo of her as a child on his shoulders, both of them sunburned, laughing, untouched by what came later. She hadn't said what she came for. Just stood in the doorway, the photo like a shield between them. He looked older than she remembered. Not weak, just worn. Like someone who knew which words couldn't be taken back. "You came for answers?" he asked eventually. "No," she said. "I came to return this." She handed him the photo. Didn't wait for him to speak. By the time the door closed, she was already down the path. She never looked back. Back in the present, Marin exhaled through her nose. He always needed to control the narrative. Even from a distance, Jamie's gaze lowered to her hands. One finger was twitching, just barely. Not nerves memory. He put his name on nothing, she whispered. That was his thing. Make the biggest move, then vanish. Let you carry the weight of guessing why. Why now? Jamie asked. Why your wedding? A long pause. She opened her mouth. Closed it. Again. He said something once, she murmured, after my mom died. I was 16, he said. One day, you'll understand why I did it this way. I thought he meant the funeral, the quiet, the lack of people. Jamie studied her. But maybe he meant more. She looked up, and in that moment, something shifted, not in her eyes. In her posture, it was so small, a half-inch of spine stiffening, like someone remembering they were supposed to be angry. I forgot, she said. God, I forgot something. Narrator aside, some memories don't rot. They wait. When I was 20, she said, he offered to pay for grad school, said it was the last thing he owed me. I said no. I tore the check in front of him. Jamie stayed silent, and he just nodded. No fight, no guilt trip. But later I found another envelope, hidden in the box my mom's jewelry used to be in. No note, just the check. Dated the same day. What did you do? I burned it. Jamie raised his eyebrows, but I never forgot where he hid it. Her voice went hollow. Same box the cufflinks were in. She looked at him now, not at the receipt. At him. I said I didn't know, she said slowly. But maybe I did. Somewhere deep, maybe I wanted to believe I didn't. Emotional reversal. She had painted her father as a villain, cold, distant, controlling. But maybe what haunted her more was that he had once loved her, quietly, compulsively. And she hadn't known how to receive it. Maybe betrayal wasn't about cruelty. Maybe it was about timing, symbolic object. The receipt lay between them on the wooden bench, like a knife no one would pick up. Jamie leaned forward. What if it wasn't control? He asked. What if it was regret? Marin blinked. Maybe. This was the only way he knew how to be near you, he said. She didn't respond. In the silence, a wind moved through the trees. The kind that made things fall, leaves, old thoughts, the stories we tell to protect ourselves. She stood. Jamie stood too. Her hand hovered near his pocket. But she didn't ask for the receipt back. Some truths, once found, are too sharp to hold. Narrator aside. If justice still matters, you'll want the next page, later. When the guests were gone and the music faded, Marin returned to her dressing room alone. She sat in front of the mirror and studied her reflection, not for flaws, but for memories. Then, from the drawer, she pulled out the cufflink box again. This time, she opened it slowly. Inside, beneath the velvet insert, taped in the corner, a consa. Second receipt. For the rehearsal dinner. Same name. Same ink, but this one had a note scribbled on the back. Just 3 words. I saw you. She dropped it, and the box landed upside down. Empty. Some drawers aren't locked with keys, but with shame. She hadn't been in this room since the week she left. Not really. Her body might have returned over the years, trailing apologies or small talk through the hallway, but she never stayed long. The air always tasted the same, like lavender and old tension. Dust lined the windowsill like a soft warning. Be careful what you disturb. She stood now in the center of it, older but not steadier, arms crossed over the sweater she used to sleep in. Her childhood bedroom hadn't changed. Same peeling star stickers on the ceiling. Same bookshelf, slumped from the weight of books never finished. Same pine wood dresser with the bottom right drawer that never opened. Marin stared at it. It looked harmless, like everything else in the room. But it wasn't. She'd tried to open it once when she was 16, angry at everyone, clawing at anything she could control. It hadn't budged. Her father had caught her and snapped, not in volume, but with a precision that landed harder. "That drawer's not for you." She'd always assumed it held something embarrassing. Old letters, maybe. A photo of the woman he loved before her mother. Maybe just receipts he didn't want her mother to find. But now she stood here without the veil of adolescence. Her father was dead to her, even if his heart still beat somewhere. And something about the drawer felt unfinished. Footsteps behind her. Her mother. "Don't," she said softly. No greeting. No small smile. Just that one word, too practiced. Marin didn't turn. "Why not?" Her mother hesitated. "Because you won't like what you find." "So it's mine to find." Silence, then a sigh, tired, maternal, and just a little afraid. "Not everything is a story that needs telling, Marin." Marin didn't respond. She knelt slowly, her hand moving to the drawer's knob. To her surprise, it opened. No resistance. No click, just a smooth slide of old wood over old secrets. Inside, a single envelope, yellowed at the edges. No name, no stamp. But the date written across the seal stopped her breath. March 3rd, the day she cut him off. Narrator aside, but the envelope didn't just hold words. It held everything he hadn't said. She held it like it might burn her. Her mother hovered in the doorway now, arms crossed, eyes unreadable. "He put it there that night," she said. "I watched him. He sat at the edge of your bed for an hour and didn't speak. Just held that envelope. Then tucked it in and left the room like it was a tomb." Marin didn't ask why her mother never told her. She already knew. She sat down on the carpet, legs folded beneath her like the girl she used to be, and peeled the envelope open. The paper inside crackled thin, fragile, the kind they sold in those old stationery sets he used to keep in the den. The letter was written in his hand. Not perfect, but steady. Familiar loops and pressure. "Marin, you probably won't read this. Not for a long time, maybe never. I deserve that. I tried to fight you less than I should have. I thought giving you space meant I was doing right by you. But maybe I just didn't want to see how much I'd already broken. There are things I should have said when you were 12. When you were 16. That night you tore up the check. I let you believe I was proud of your defiance. Truth is, I was relieved you still had fire left. I'd already burned so much of you. I never knew how to say I was sorry without sounding like I wanted something. But I never stopped being your father. Not even when I stopped being welcome. You were always more than what I feared you'd become. I hope you know that." Love, Dad. Marin read it twice, then again. Each time, her throat closed tighter. Across from her, her mother sank into the armchair. She wasn't crying, but she looked older now. "He never sent it," Marin said, voice dull. "He couldn't." "Why not?" Her mother hesitated. "Because he thought you'd already decided who he was." Marin looked down at the paper. Her father's words were soft, but not small. Not manipulative. Just late. She thought of all the versions of him she'd carried like stones. The stern father. The silent one. The man who vanished from the front row, but still paid for the aisle. And now this one. The one who wrote letters and didn't send them, narrator aside. But maybe it wasn't about the drawer. Maybe it was about who he used to be before the silence. She leaned back against the dresser, the letter in her lap, her fingers smudging the ink. Her mother reached out, but didn't touch her. He never forgave himself. Even when he tried to act like he did. Marin blinked hard. "I hated him," she whispered. "I made him into a villain because it was easier than remembering. Remembering what?" She swallowed. "That once I needed him. And he wasn't there." Emotional reversal. She pressed the letter flat against her knees. Her breath caught. "What am I supposed to do with this now?" "Keep it," her mother said. "Or don't, but don't pretend it doesn't matter." Outside, a bird hit the window and flew away. Just a thud, then gone. She stood, smoothed her dress. folded the letter again, tucked it back in the envelope. Then, without looking at her mother, she walked out of the room. She didn't take the letter with her, but she left the drawer open. Truths rot when sealed too long. She was 9 when she first found the attic hatch. Her father had carried her down moments later, her legs kicking through the air, her hands clutching a music box she'd stolen from a corner she wasn't meant to find. He hadn't scolded her, just looked tired, older than she remembered from breakfast. Now 20 years later, the attic waited like it had been holding its breath. The air was brittle. Dust moved like memory in the shafts of light. She climbed the ladder slowly, each rung creaking like a question she didn't want answered. Her mother had said she shouldn't go up there, that there was nothing worth digging through, especially not now. But grief doesn't follow curfews, and suspicion has its own pulse. She wasn't looking for anything, not really. She just needed. Somewhere the air hadn't already been ruined by silence. Boxes surrounded her like tombstones. Some with labels, some with dates. One with her father's handwriting, sharp, angled, overly careful. It said, tax receipts 99-2004, but the box next to it was unlabeled, older, torn at one corner, and inside, nestled between faded baseball cards and a child's broken watch, was a shoebox wrapped in twine. The knot was uneven, but tight, like someone had rushed to close it before they lost their nerve. The label was faint, but still legible. Play, if she ever comes back. Her mouth went dry. The lid lifted with a crackle like burning paper. Inside, buried under an old photograph she didn't recognize, was a mini tape recorder. Cassette still inside. The play button yellowed with time. She almost dropped it. The weight wasn't the device. It was the voice waiting inside. She pressed play, static, then breath. Then her father's voice, lower, slower, raw in a way she'd never heard it before. If you're hearing this, then either I'm dead, or she's forgiven enough to come back. The attic held its breath. So did she. You were always stubborn, like me, but I think you got your silence from her. Your mother. A pause. I need you to know what happened. Not what you were told. Not what it looked like, the night you left. The night you said you never wanted to see me again. She felt her pulse press into her teeth. You thought I kicked you out. I didn't. I begged her not to make me say it. But she said if I didn't, she would, and she'd make it sound worse, more final. The tape clicked slightly. The sound of him breathing filled the space like a ghost trying to speak through fog. She said it was for your own good. Said you needed to be shocked out of your path. Pregnant, unmarried, 20, like a stain she couldn't scrub out of the family name. But I was proud. I was scared, but I was proud. Another pause. She threatened to leave. Said she'd cut you off, cut me off. Said she had photos, evidence of things that could wreck us both. Things from before you were born. Photos? I did what I thought would keep you safe. What would keep her from doing worse? I played the villain. And you walked out, just like she wanted. But the photo in the shoebox wasn't just of her father. It was her mother. In a hospital corridor, holding an envelope, smiling at someone just out of frame. Not grief, not fear, something colder. Calculated. She clutched the recorder tighter. The voice cracked now. I left you that bouquet. I waited in the car every year on your birthday. You never saw me. But I never missed one. I thought time would undo what silence twisted. But silence doesn't forgive. It fossilizes. I never told you whose idea it really was. Whose lie turned into your exile. Then quieter, I'm sorry. Not just for the words, but for all the ones I didn't say. The tape stopped, clicked, word back a moment. Then silence. She sat in the attic's fading light, tears sliding without drama, without sound. The recorder resting in her lap like a confession too late for court. She had hated him. For the tone, the finality, the coldness. but it hadn't been his. Not entirely, her mother's. Voice echoed from downstairs. "Sweetheart, you find what you needed?" She didn't answer. She stared at the photo again. At the smile that now felt venomous. What else had she lied about? She opened the bottom of the shoebox. Another tape. Unlabeled. If justice still matters. You'll want the next page. She didn't press play. Not yet, but she knew, even before the tape rolled, that the voice she'd hear next wouldn't be his, and it wouldn't be sorry. Sometimes, the villain is wearing your perfume. When she was 13, the fight wasn't about the dress. It never really was. It was about the silence that followed, the slammed door, and the scent that lingered after her mother passed by a jasmine perfume that only smelled like home until it didn't. The dress had been yellow, one her father bought from a flea market in a town they never went back to. It was too big, the seam slightly off, but it made her feel seen. She wore it for 3 minutes before her mother told her it made her look cheap. Her father had tried to laugh it off. He said something about sunlight and growing into things. That night ended with her crying on the bathroom floor. Now nearly 2 decades later, she stood in the guest room of her mother's house, which was somehow colder than the attic. The closet still smelled faintly of jasmine. Same brand, same bottle, and maybe that was the problem. Some things never changed. She ran her fingers along the edge of the dresser, fingertips tracing memories carved too deep. A picture frame faced down beside a ceramic perfume tray. She turned it over. The photo was of her parents, laughing, unscripted. But the photo hid something worse. Behind the glass was a second, folded photo, one of her, age 8, in the arms of a woman who looked like her mother but smiled like a stranger. She pulled it free. On the back, "She doesn't need you anymore." Breath snagged. There'd been whispers when she was younger. A late-night phone call her mother answered in clipped tones. A woman who came to the door once, left a note, and vanished before anyone opened it. She used to think it was all just imagination, but memory has a way of waiting. Rotting, but waiting. She opened the top drawer of the dresser, slowly. Inside, a lipstick nude pink, her mother's favorite, sat beside a stack of old receipts. And an envelope with no stamp. Inside was a torn piece of stationery, edges curled. It read, "She thinks I left. She doesn't know the truth. If she ever asks, tell her I tried." The handwriting was her father's, slanted, hurried. She blinked. Once. Twice. In the hallway, a floorboard groaned. Her mother didn't knock. "You're digging into things that should stay buried," she said. Arms crossed, voice wrapped in warning. "Did he write this before or after you told him to leave?" Her mother stiffened. Her mouth parted, then closed again. "He wasn't good for you. That's not what I asked." A beat passed. Then another. Her mother looked away. "You don't understand the choices I had to make." But she did. All too well. Because mothers sometimes choose silence over truth, protection over presence, control over clarity. And sometimes they choose for you. She lifted the lipstick. It had been her mother's signature for years, not just the shade, but the way she applied it, slowly, like armor. She remembered being 5 and watching her mother reapply it before every phone call with her father. As if words went down easier with color on your lips. She unscrewed the cap. The scent hit her first familiar, synthetic, sweet. But beneath the lipstick, something hard. She twisted the base. A flash drive, buried inside like a secret. Another silence, sealed. "What's on it?" she asked. Her mother didn't answer. Just stood there, one hand clenching the doorknob, the other twitching like it wanted to reach for the past and strangle it. "You always blamed him," she said. "Said he abandoned us. That he never came back. He didn't fight hard enough. Or maybe you slammed the door." Her mother flinched. The silence roared louder than any scream. "Do you know what it does to a kid?" Her voice cracked. "To think she wasn't worth staying for?" Her mother sat on the edge of the bed, the frame creaking under weight that wasn't just physical. I was afraid, she whispered. Of what? Of not being enough, of him taking you, of you loving him more than me. And there it was, not malice, not cruelty, just fear, twisted into control. The flash drive was warm in her hand. What else did you hide? Her mother didn't speak, but her eyes said it all. Shame doesn't shout. She turned back to the drawer. Beneath a velvet jewelry pouch she found a small music box, broken. She remembered it used to play Edelweiss. Her father gave it to her before everything fell apart. The crank was stiff. She forced it, and the melody croaked to life, warped and uneven. She remembered that night now. The last one. The fight hadn't been about bills or betrayal. It had been about her, about who got to love her, about who got to leave and who got to stay. She watched her mother as the broken notes played. For the first time, she looked small, not the villain. Just a woman who lost too much to her own fear. But fear still breaks things. It still ruins childhoods. She left the drawer open and walked to the hallway, flash drive still in her palm. If justice still matters, you'll want the next page. The music box played its final note, a whimper, not a song. She never wore that perfume again. Exclusion isn't silence. It's a scream with no voice. She found it by accident. A loose paper jammed under an empty printer tray. Crumpled, dusty. One corner was torn, as if someone had tried to shred it by hand, but got interrupted halfway through. It was the guest list. Not the final version, but the draft. And at the very bottom, circled in faint pencil, and then crossed out in harsh red ink, was his name, James Wren. Her father. The letters bled through like a wound that had never scabbed. She stared at the name for so long, her vision blurred, and for a terrifying moment, she thought she might vomit. The room tilted. She sank to the floor. Her childhood bedroom had been converted into a storage overflow, a liminal space that didn't belong to one anymore. Boxes labeled Taxes 2015 and Winter Decor shoved beside her old bookshelf, still housing a cracked snow globe and a copy of the Velveteen Rabbit. The list trembled in her hands. Not from age, from her. 6 months ago. That meant he was supposed to be invited, and someone her mother had changed it. There are betrayals so quiet, they echo longer than screams. She tried to remember the conversations, the planning, the nights spent on Pinterest boards and seating charts. Her mother always had a glass of wine, always a too tight smile when her name came up. Do we really want to make it messy? She'd say, he'll just make it about him. But she never said he wasn't invited. That was the trick. He had been invited and uninvited. Without her knowing, her hands moved on their own, opening the laptop still tucked in her childhood desk. The battery was dead, of course. Everything from that part of her life was. She caught her reflection in the black screen. Eyes red, a little mascara bleeding under one eye. Not from crying, not yet, but something had cracked. And once it starts, it doesn't stop. There were more papers inside the desk drawer. She pulled until it stuck, until the swollen wood thudded against her palm. Wrapping paper, thank you cards, envelopes, a single gold pen. And at the bottom, her wedding RSVP spreadsheet. Printed, annotated in her own handwriting. Page 2, Table 5, groom's cousins. Page 3, Table 9, reserved for reconciliation. Her father had been listed there. Then someone's pen, not hers, had scribbled, too risky. She swallowed. Her mouth tasted like metal. Narrator whisper. But this wasn't the only name removed. She flipped back through the pages. Several names scratched out. Some with notes. Too emotional. Might tell her. Not helpful. Her mother's handwriting, not flowing cursive like hers, but sharp. Almost angry, she remembered, suddenly, the fight. The one that felt like nothing at the time. 2 months before the wedding. She had asked, half-heartedly, if she should reach out to him. Her mother had frozen mid-pour. White wine spilled over the rim of the glass. "He doesn't deserve that," she'd said, cold, flat, final. And somehow she'd agreed. She let her mother soothe her into silence. Let her convince her that avoidance was strength. That not inviting him was her idea. Memory is a mirror. It cracks exactly where the lie was told. She stood too fast and knocked over the desk chair. It clattered against the hardwood. No one came. The house was empty. She stared at the invitation box on the shelf, the extras. Ivory cardstock, gold embossed. She ran her finger across the stack, each one pristine, untouched, unmailed. There had been just enough for 98 guests. She remembered the count. And yet, she'd ordered 102 extra. One of them had been for him. Had he ever seen it? Or had her mother burned it in this very room while she slept? Narrator whisper, but a fire always leaves smoke. She picked up the invitation box. Opened it. Just ribbon and emptiness and no scent of ash. No proof. Only that list. Only that name. She took the crumpled sheet and pressed it flat against the desk. The red ink felt too bold now, violent, like someone wanted to erase. More than a guest. She opened her phone. Her hands hovered. Call log. Nothing. Not in years. Text messages. Thread deleted. She searched his name. Her heart pounded. And there he was. James Wren. Profile photo 2 years old. Standing beside a boat, holding a small dog she didn't recognize. His eyes were tired but trying. She clicked and paused. She didn't message. Didn't call. Just stared. A memory surfaced. Her 8th birthday. She'd cried because no one from school came. He showed up in a magician's hat, pulled a coin from her ear, and made the dog bark on cue. She'd laughed until she hiccuped. Ikindi. Hadn't forgotten her then. And yet, at her wedding, nothing. Or so she thought. Emotional reversal. She thought he'd given up. But he'd been erased. Her throat felt raw. She turned from the desk, and her eye caught something tucked behind a picture frame. A small folded scrap of gold ribbon from the invitation set. Wrinkled, as if it had once been tied into a bow. She uncurled it slowly. The knot still marked the middle. It had been opened. A single name was scrawled on the inside. James. In her own handwriting. She must have written it. Maybe late at night. Maybe with intention. Maybe with hope. But it had never been sent. And now she didn't know who had kept it. Silent setup. Something was taken. But something else was hidden. She stood in the doorway of her old room, that torn list in one hand, the ribbon in the other. The house smelled of lemon cleaner and old. Choices, downstairs. Her mother was humming. The kind of tune that sounds like innocence until you know what it covers. She walked down slowly. Her mother was wiping a glass. Find what you were looking for? She asked, not looking up. No, she said. But her voice cracked. Her mother froze. A beat. Then another. Then, softly. It wasn't supposed to hurt you. She turned. Her eyes were full but not wet. What was? Her mother set the glass down, held the towel in both hands like a prayer she didn't believe in. You needed to move forward, not backward. He has a way of making people feel owed. A pause. And I couldn't watch you become the version of you that breaks. She almost believed her. Almost. But beneath that soft voice was a scream. The scream of a woman who had felt erased by the same man. A woman who couldn't bear to be second place in her daughter's heart. A woman who had rewritten a wedding to hold on to control. Antagonist depth. She didn't erase him to hurt her daughter. She erased him because she was afraid. She walked out without speaking, past the photo wall, past the dusty keys, past the mailbox with a lock that never worked. She sat in her car, pulled the list from her pocket, and looked again at the red line. Not through his name, but through hers. If justice still matters, you'll want the next page. She stared out the windshield. And for the first time, couldn't remember why she had gotten married at all. Truth has a price, and someone always pays it. She remembered the way he used to whistle when he shaved. Half a tune, always unfinished. Mornings at 7, a drip in the kitchen sink, the scrape of his razor, her mother slamming cupboard doors harder than needed. The whistle never flinched. She found him again like a thread catches on a nail, by accident, but not quite. Her thumb had hovered over the contact list for days. Then came the search, a half-name typed into a social page, a blurry photo outside. A cafe in a town too quiet for coincidence. And then, today. It was the cafe where nothing matched. Teal cups, mustard chairs, plants that needed water. She spotted him through the window before she pushed the door. He didn't see her at first. The man who turned was smaller than memory, as if guilt had gnawed his shoulders down. His hair had gone mostly gray, but the eyes were the same, startled. Soft. He stood, unsure if it was a handshake or a hug. They did neither. They sat across chipped formica. Between them, a sugar jar, a trembling spoon, 2 decades of what ifs. Her voice broke first. You were on the guest list. He looked at her hands instead of her face. I didn't expect to be. She crossed your name out. He blinked. Once. That was all. She reached into her purse and placed something on the table. A torn envelope, corners curled. Inside, the red-inked list. One name violently erased. A line thick enough to scream. She told me you never wanted to come. He reached for the envelope but didn't touch it. I bought a suit. The silence sucked the air out. The suit he never wore. The walk he never made. The aisle she thought he chose not to walk down. Why didn't you fight harder? She whispered. His jaw worked once, twice. I tried, you wouldn't pick up. And she made it clear. He stopped. Took a breath. I thought being out of the way was what you needed. She studied his fingers, weathered, scarred. A burn near the thumb, the same one he got fixing the porch light when she was 9. Proof that some men don't vanish all at once. Some fade. Slowly, leaving smudges. You left me, she said, not as an accusation, but as a fact, trying on new clothes. Your mother said you didn't want me. That you were better off with clean breaks. That anything else was cruelty. There it was. A second words, planted years ago, now blooming thorns. She remembered the night she screamed at them both. 12 and shaking, mascara down her cheeks. She told him to go. Her mother stood behind her, silent, arms folded. She never knew until now what that silence meant. She told you that I hated you, she said. He nodded. And she told you I just left. Neither of them reached for their coffee. She pulled out a small cloth-wrapped bundle from her bag, unfolded it. A broken keychain, the cracked ceramic heart she made for him in 2nd grade, glued back 3 times. I kept this, she said. His eyes blurred, then cleared. I thought it was lost. She could feel the weight shifting. All these years, she wore her anger like armor, but now it felt hollow. Heavy but useless. She said she protected me, she muttered. But from what? He didn't answer, but his face said enough. From disappointment, from his poverty, from his grief, from a man broken by something deeper than divorce. You look like her, he said finally. I'm scared I am her, she replied. A silence held. He finally reached into his coat, pulled out a folded paper, aged and soft at the edges. This was your graduation letter, the one I never sent. She said it would confuse you. She took it, careful not to tear it. His handwriting still looked like Sunday mornings. Looped, deliberate, not hurried. She didn't open it. Not yet. I bought you a necklace for your wedding. But I left it at the church gate. Thought maybe someone would get it to you. Her hand moved to her chest. She wore pearls that day, from her mother. Another lie. Another theft. She was scared I'd win you back, he said, almost to himself. There it was. The antagonist's wound, the fear of irrelevance. The ache of a man who lost not to time, but to silence. I don't know how to forgive this, she said. I'm not asking you to. She looked up. I just want you to stop hating a ghost. He said. The spoon rattled against the sugar jar. No one touched it. He stood to leave. She stayed seated. Wait, she said. He paused. What did the letter say? He turned, his coat catching the sunlight like smoke. That I loved you even. When you didn't wave goodbye. If justice still matters, you'll want the next page. She watched him disappear into the blur of lunch hour traffic. The coffee had gone cold. The envelope still sat between them, and her own wedding ring so bright, so new suddenly felt like a lock on the wrong door. Some debts are paid with silence. She stepped into the house behind her, the door clicking shut like the closing of a chapter. The hallway was dim light pooled only where the curtains parted. Her mother stood at the far end, arms curled around her waist as if hugging years back into place. The perfume of lemon cleaner still lingered, but beneath it, something heavier regret, untold. Her mother didn't speak. But the air between them vibrated with everything unsaid. Marin dropped her bag. The sound hit the wood like a verdict. You found him? Her mother's voice was brittle, quiet, and loud all at once. She nodded. No words, no defense. Her mother closed her eyes. I wished you hadn't. They both stayed still, two shapes waiting for the other to move first. But resolution isn't found in staying still. Marin's eyes slid to the mantel. The framed wedding photo, edges dulled, showed her smiling at Liam. But behind her stood a shadow, her mother's posture rigid, ever watchful. A silent sentinel. The receipt, the one marked, paid in full, Dad, sat on the console beside the phone. She hadn't had the courage to open it yet. She picked it up, ran her finger over the words, zero balance. The note, Dad. Her throat closed around so much weight, emotion rose slow. Steady, like blood rushing to a wound. You didn't send the letter, her mother whispered. You never told him I offered to pay. But he went ahead anyway. Marin's grip tightened. He didn't know. She looked at her mother. But he gave. Two women, same wound, refusing to name it. Marin sighed. I saw the guest list. Her mother blinked. You didn't. I did. The ground shifted. Her mother's voice cracked. I was protecting you. Marin stared. How long do you think he wanted to be at my wedding? How loud do you think his silence screamed? Her mother lowered her head. Enough to make me afraid you'd let him in. I thought if I erased him, I could keep him from hurting you more. She shook her head. I wasn't his to protect. I was his daughter. Her mother's eyes snapped up, red. I was afraid you'd choose him. A pause, vulnerable, real. I did, Marin said softly. And he did everything he could to be with me. The truth overwhelmed them both. Her mother exhaled. Maybe I couldn't stand losing you again. That admission, fragile, crumbling, pierced them. But forgiveness doesn't show up in excuses. They moved together toward the console. The receipt trembled under Marin's fingers. She opened it. The line paid in full echoed louder than any apology. It wasn't about money. It was about being seen. Her mother's hand hovered above hers, then withdrew. She turned away to hide her tears. Marin watched her. The woman who had erased her father was weeping over the words he left unsigned. Emotional reversal. The protector crumbling. The trespasser holding the bridge. She stepped forward, placed her hand on her mother's back. It's not over, she said. But it can be different. Her mother nodded, unsure if the next word was trust or guilt. Marin folded the receipt, tucked it into her purse. Then from the console drawer, she pulled out something, a dusty wrapped box. She set it between them. The broken music box from childhood. The one he gifted the day before everything went silent. She wound it. The melody played, slow and crooked, Edelweiss. skipping at each note like a heart relearning how to beat. They listened together. As children, we knew how to forgive, Marin said. We just forgot how to listen. Her mother didn't respond. Instead, she reached out, turned the box over in her hands, as if weighing what it meant. The final bill lay between them, and beyond it, more bills unpaid, conversations unfinished. Marin reached inside her purse. I called him, she said. We have a meeting. Her mother's breath hitched. Meeting, you mean? Face to face. Not just the letter or the receipt. It's time. Her mother closed her eyes. I'll come too, Marin nodded. No fear now, only something quieter. Hope. Their shoulders touched, aligning two broken compasses pointing forward. If reconciliation still matters, you'll want the next page. They left the house together, the music box's song lingering like forgiveness. And somewhere beneath it, the echo of a father's footsteps, finally answered. Final line must leave chill. And in the silent hallway, the wedding photo shimmered in the dusk light, her mother's eyes tracing her back, but this time with relief. Not control. The words we need most often arrive too late. She sat at the kitchen table long after the light had changed, after the coffee had gone cold in her cup. The pen in her hand hovered above a blank page, the paper smooth and cruel, waiting to be stained. A candle flickered beside her, white wax dripping in slow surrender, casting soft shadows that danced like ghosts she'd never buried. It was raining again, not loudly but enough to hear it. The kind of rain that felt like it had something to say. She used to write letters to her father when she was 8. Not to send, just to pretend. She'd tuck them inside her diary, believing maybe they'd seep into the world somehow, like roots under soil reaching. This letter would be different. She wrote his name first, just that. Dad. The pen hesitated after the D, as if even the word might betray her. Then she kept going. I thought you stopped loving me when you left. But maybe I just needed that to be true. She paused. The ink gleamed weightly. A smudge from her thumb blurred the just, like even now. The truth resisted being clean. She remembered her 8th birthday, the pink cake with the melting icing, the sound of the front door opening, then closing, and how her mother's jaw had stiffened like glass cooling too fast. That was the day she decided who the villain was. Her mother, standing alone. Her father, already gone. It was easier to blame one cleanly than admit two people could be broken in different ways. She kept writing. You missed my first recital, but Mom didn't clap either. She pushed the paper aside and reached for the box in the drawer, the one she hadn't touched in years. Inside, a dried flower from prom night, a hotel receipt from their honeymoon, a photo of her father holding her as a baby, creased and water-stained. Like something rescued from a flood, there was also the cufflink, just one, gold, scratched, his initials barely visible. She'd found it years ago in a drawer of things her mother never spoke about. She'd kept it, without understanding why. Some debts aren't paid in cash. She laid the cufflink on the paper, next to the letter. A weightless apology. He'd never see it. That wasn't the point. I told myself you didn't love me, she wrote, because it hurt less than admitting. You didn't know how. There it was. The sentence she had never said out loud. The sentence she'd stitched into every silence between her and her husband. Love and fear were the same. Face when you're young. Her hand trembled. Not from sadness, but from release. She kept writing. I think Mom broke differently than you. You left, she stayed. But she held on so tightly, it still felt like leaving. The rain softened to a whisper. A lullaby for memory. You didn't teach me how to love men. You taught me how to wait for them to disappoint me. A breath caught. A flinch behind the ribs. She set the pen down. Sometimes healing sounds like betrayal. She reread the letter from the beginning. It didn't ask for anything. It didn't beg or blame. It just named the thing. What do you call grief that has no date of death? She folded the paper in thirds, clean and slow. No envelope. Just the letter and the cufflink, tied together with a red ribbon from a box of chocolates. He'd sent her once. The only gift she remembered him giving her after the age of 10. But she didn't know the ribbon still smelled like smoke. She didn't mean for anyone to find it. It was a goodbye. A mirror. A small release of control that her husband came in. An hour later, the house was quiet. The kind of quiet that warned you something sacred had been unearthed. He found the letter on the table dotted first. He thought it was for him. He read the first line. Then the second. His eyes slowed. Then stopped. She didn't hear him reading it. She was upstairs, brushing her hair, counting strokes like her mother used to do. 30 before bed. An old ritual of control disguised as care. Downstairs, he finished the letter. He looked at the cufflink. He touched it like it might burn him, and he realized he had married a woman made of stories he'd never heard. Emotional reversal. Love turning into unfamiliarity. He thought he knew her. Her silences, her preferences, the way she folded towels. But he had never known this grief, this shape of her pain, this unfinished sentence that began before he entered her life. And now he wondered, had she ever been fully here? She came down the stairs, unaware, humming, calm. He looked at her like a stranger. She saw the letter in his hands. Her body stiffened. But she didn't reach for it. "You weren't supposed to read that," she said. He nodded, but didn't hand it back. "I didn't know," he whispered, "any of it." Her voice was flat. "Most people don't ask." He stepped closer. "You were still carrying him." She smiled, tired. "I was still carrying me." But he wasn't sure that was better. There was a silence between them that felt like standing on opposite ends of a bridge that hadn't been built yet. He looked down at the letter again. Then at her. "Is this goodbye?" She didn't answer. Just took the cufflink from his hand, held it in her palm. "No," she said. "It's the truth. I just didn't want it buried with me." She placed the cufflink on the windowsill, where the rainlight caught it like a gold tear. "You think you marry someone, and that's the beginning," she whispered. "But sometimes they're already in the middle of a sentence you didn't write." She turned, walked to the kitchen. The sound of the kettle boiling rose behind them, and in the silence between them, the truth settled, not loud, not cruel, just final. The cufflink gleamed in the window like a promise no longer needed. Legacy isn't what we leave behind. It's what we plant in secret. She didn't notice the envelope at first. It was wedged between a pizza flyer and a water bill. Plain white, no stamp, no return address. The handwriting was familiar in the way a scent can be, faint but undeniable. It made her stop on the porch, key still in hand, her breath catching before the reason caught up. Inside, the air was warm with dinner. Her husband was setting the table, humming something tuneless. Their dog padded up to greet her, tail thumping, unaware the world had just tilted. She kept the envelope in her coat pocket while they ate. There was pasta, too much garlic, laughter. Her husband brushed a lock of hair from her face and asked if she was okay. She said yes, but the envelope burned cold against her hip. After the dishes, she stood at the sink, hands buried in suds. Her reflection in the dark window looked older than she felt, like her face had heard a story she hadn't been told yet. She dried her hands and went upstairs. The bedroom was dim. Their life here was still new boxes half unpacked, frames leaning against walls, books stacked like promises. She sat on the edge of the bed and opened the envelope. Inside was a single page. No words, just a photo. A girl, maybe 6 or 7, caught mid-laugh, arms reaching up towards someone out of frame. The light hit her eyes in that rare, unrepeatable way children sometimes have, like joy hadn't learned fear yet. She knew the photo, not the moment, not the day, but the face. Hers. She turned the photo over. In the same unpracticed, halting script. "Still my little girl." She stared at it so long her Eyes blurred. It had been 3 months since she wrote the letter. Not for him, but about him. A letter that didn't ask for anything. A letter that had closed something inside her. Or so she thought. She opened the second paper tucked behind the photo. A bank slip. One line, escrow deposit $42,000. No sender. No note. Just a silent sum that should not have been possible. Her fingers curled around the edge of the photo, like she might crush it into dust. But she didn't. She pressed it to her chest instead. But money carries memory, too, and not always kindly. That night, she couldn't sleep. She lay beside her husband, listening to his breath, steady and safe. But her mind reeled back past. Birthdays skipped, the hospital stay no one came to, the graduation where she stood alone. All the spaces where he hadn't been, and yet here it was. A gift without a name. Love, perhaps, in a language he only now learned how to speak. Emotional reversal. Pride tasted different when it came wrapped in sacrifice. She remembered a story her mother told once, during one of those rare soft nights, how he'd sold his guitar after the divorce. Not out of need, but because there wasn't any music left in the house. That same man, now giving in silence. She walked the neighborhood before dawn. Just her and the sound of leaves brushing pavement. The world felt paused, like it was holding its breath with her. Was this forgiveness? Or a bribe? Was it grief delayed and clumsy? She didn't know. Back home, she stood in the doorway of their new kitchen. The backsplash half-tiled, their names written in pencil on the wall studs beneath. She had joked about hiding a time capsule. There once just something small. She understood that impulse now. She picked up the photo. Again. His shadow was just out of frame. That was the part that haunted her. He wasn't visible, but she could feel him like a memory caught in the light. She pulled an old box from the closet. Inside, her baby book, a hospital bracelet, a flattened penny from a zoo trip she barely remembered. At the bottom, a second photo. Him, holding her on his shoulders, both of them grinning like the world had not yet split. She laid both photos side by side on the floor. Time does not always take things away. Sometimes it just buries them deeper. She heard her husband stir upstairs. The dog's nails clicked on the hardwood, echoing down the hall. But she didn't move, not yet. She picked up her phone, typed his number from memory, hovered over the call button. Then stopped. Because what do you say to the man who gave you absence, and now offers roots? She remembered what it felt like to wait. By the window as a child, backpack on, shoes laced tight, watching every car that passed. How she'd stopped believing he was coming the moment her mother looked away. But this time, there was no window. Just a line she could cross or not. She closed. Her eyes unpressed. Call. One ring. Two. Then silence. No voicemail. Just the soft click of a line gone cold. But unanswered calls echo longer than words ever can. She didn't call back. She placed the photo inside the kitchen drawer next to the measuring spoons and recipe cards. Not hidden, not displayed. Just there. She told her husband later about the money, about the note, about what she hadn't let herself feel until now. He didn't speak at first. Just pulled her close. His hands warm against her back. I think he's trying, he said finally. I think he's late, she replied. He nodded. But he's here. She didn't answer, because here was a word that carried weight. Presence isn't the same as repair. Still, she left the photo in the drawer. Still, she didn't return the money. Still, the house began to feel like theirs. If justice still matters, you'll want the next page. And on mornings when the sun angled just right through the kitchen window, the drawer would creak open slightly, as if reaching, just like the girl in the picture. Some memories age like bruises fading, but never gone. The living room smelled faintly of lavender and old wood polish. Afternoon light filtered through the curtains, settling on the couch where she sat, legs folded under her, her daughter tucked beside her like a secret the world hadn't earned. Yet, on the screen, a younger version of herself laughed. The wedding dress looked simpler now. Less like a fairy tale, more like armor stitched from expectations. Her veil trembled in the summer wind, just as it had that day, as if it too had. Second thoughts, her daughter was eating red licorice, one strand at a time. The kind that stains fingers and sticks to molars. Her small hand paused in midair. Who's that man? She hadn't heard it coming. That line, that voice. That tone, not curiosity, but something older, eerily instinctive. The girl pointed at the edge of the frame. A shadow figure behind the wrought iron gate. He had stood there for exactly 4 seconds. 4 seconds the videographer hadn't meant to catch. 4 seconds that should have been cut. But weren't. A suit too dark for July, hands clenched at his sides like he was trying not to hold something or someone. Tears 1, maybe 2. The wind didn't touch him. Nothing did. Was he invited? Her daughter asked. She pressed pause. Silence fell like an apology too late. Her thumb hovered over the remote, a ghost gesture. No, she said. But her voice cracked on the way down, betraying what her spine tried to hold upright. Her daughter waited, not impatient, not afraid. Just waiting. Like she knew this was a moment that mattered. She tried to swallow the dryness in her throat. She'd once believed some truths were too large to speak aloud. But now, holding the future in her arms, she knew. Some lies echo longer. That man. She began, each word pulled like thread from an old sweater, unraveling everything. Used to be someone I thought had left me. But he hadn't. Not really. She let the remote fall to the cushion, reached across her lap to the coffee table drawer. The old tin box inside still bore scratches from the move, and the one before that. She opened it slowly, like peeling back. Skin dot inside, a torn receipt, now brittle and yellowed. A photo of a girl laughing with chocolate all over her cheeks. And a watch. The watch was the kind given at retirement, not childhood. Thick gold, too big for her wrist. She had once buried it in the backyard. Dug it up at 16. Buried it again after college. It always found its way back. This was his, she said, placing it in her daughter's hand. The girl turned it over. The engraving was still visible, though time had faded its sharpness. To the man who never stopped showing up. He wasn't perfect. He messed up a lot. She smiled barely. So did I. She didn't tell her daughter about the voicemail or the envelope he mailed the day before her wedding. She didn't have to. On screen, the video jumped scenes. The ceremony, vows, her husband's trembling hands. Then a wide shot, guests throwing rose petals. Her mother, tight-lipped but composed. Her friends crying for reasons they couldn't explain. The man outside the gate was gone. But in the next scene, a shadow passed behind the church window. Just a blur, like a ripple in memory. Like a truth hiding in plain sight. He paid for the flowers, she whispered. And the photographer, and my dress. Why didn't you tell anyone? Her daughter asked, eyes wide, the way children. Look when the world gets complicated. Because I was angry, she said, and proud. And afraid that if I let him in again, he'd leave all over. Emotional reversal. She had thought locking the door made her strong. Now she saw it had only made her lonely. The little girl touched the screen, tracing the blurred figure. What was his name? She asked. Her breath caught. All this time she had told herself she'd protect her daughter by keeping things simple. Clean, villain, and hero. Past and future, but the truth had grown restless. His name, she said, was Thomas. And she didn't cry. Instead, she stood, crossed the room, and pulled open the bottom drawer of the hutch. The one she told everyone was just for batteries and expired coupons. Beneath it all lay an old flip phone. Dead, silent, but charged often enough to hold a little life. She handed it to her daughter. Let her press play. A voice crackled to life. Rough, warm, breaking in the middle. I know you don't want to hear from me. But I'll be there, outside. I won't ruin anything. I just want to see you happy. That's all I ever wanted. The silence after that voicemail was longer than any message. It was the sound of grief recognizing itself in the mirror. Did you ever talk to him again? Her daughter asked. Once, she said. After you were born, I sent him a photo. What? Did he say? He didn't, she smiled gently. But a week later, your college fund doubled. What she didn't say was that the envelope had no return address, only a single note. Still my little girl. Outside, wind moved through the trees like an old song forgotten. Inside, the girl pressed her cheek against her mother's side. Think he would have liked me, she said. He would have loved you, her mother replied. The video ended. Blue screen. Then static. Her daughter turned off the TV, reached for the watch and slid it on. It swallowed her wrist, just like it once had her mother's. Can we go see him? She asked. She didn't answer. Not right away, because the thing about memory is you. Think it's still, but it moves. Shifts beneath your feet like sand you once built castles on. And sometimes, a man outside a gate is more than grief. He's the reminder that love, even when exiled, waits. If justice still matters, you'll want the next page. She looked at the screen one last time. At the man no one invited, and then she whispered his name again, soft enough for the walls to forgive, her loud enough for the silence to remember.